situation. And now you have a Pembroke Welsh Corgi puppy lying on a beach. So you can see how this is more of a generic title for the image, and then the alt descriptor becomes a little bit more in depth, where now we're talking about the breed of the puppy. And somebody who might know about, okay, well, a Pembroke Welsh Corgi has this particular coloration and this particular size. It provides more context to the image that you would provide in lieu of the image actually showing up, or if it was being scraped by an assistive screen reader to help describe the image to someone who would be using that type of technology. But the takeaway from this is that the more accessible your website is, the better off that you'll be. And in some cases, you might be excluding a whole segment of an audience that could be coming to your website, especially for people, like I said, if you're doing e-commerce, having alt tags for your images is absolutely paramount. On top of the simple fact that if you've ever wondered how, when you do a search on Google, you get an option tab for images. And if you've ever wondered how does Google know what images to show you based on your relative search terms, it's because they've parsed the data from the alt tag descriptions provided for those images. So if I typed into the Google search engine, Pembroke Welsh Corgi puppy lying on a beach, if I go to image search, this image might show up because Google knew to look for Pembroke Welsh Corgi puppy on a beach because of the alt tag description that's provided there. If you provide an image with no alt text description, Google has no idea. It can't get any data from it without that alt tag description. That may change in the near future as Google's machine learning algorithms improve. But right now, if you don't have that alt tag description, it can't appear in an image search. You're muted, Andrea.
Oh, sorry. That's the saying of 2020 and 2021. You're on mute. So a couple of questions. One is, how do we find out the load speed of our website? Are there any places that you recommend?
Yeah, there's several different and I didn't want to go into too depth of them because there's so many different page speed load services. The one I tend to use is GTmetrix, which you can use. And if you might be able to provide a link for that, but I know Google Page Speed testing tools has it in there. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more as we get to Google Search Console. Google Search Console has a performance check in it for mobile and page speed. But essentially, I also use a different tool called Lighthouse to determine how fast your page might be loading. But GTmetrix tends to be one of the ones that people use the most, but there's so many different tools out there and they're all pretty much the same. The only thing I would recommend for that, if you are looking to measure the performance of your website, try to use a tool that's made by Google as opposed to something that's made by somebody else. Because in most cases, a lot of these tools are designed by people who are offering a service to improve that particular aspect that you're measuring. And in most cases, they'll try to slant it in the direction of like, yeah, we can help you measure your page speed performance if you give us your credit card number and we'll help you buy our tool and all that other kind of stuff. So I'm a big fan of net neutrality, and especially using tools that are being built by the same people that are measuring the performance of our pages in search and PageRank and such. So any of the tools that are made by Google, like I said, GTmetrix or just Google PageSpeed Insights is another good one.
Another question, is there a way to view your website in alt tag mode so you can review at a glance what images require alt tags?
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing that you could do is, and it would be very, very difficult to read, is looking at the HTML source for your website. So if you go to any web page and you right click on it, at least in Windows operating system or in Chrome, you right click and you click on inspect, and you'll get a pane on the right side of your browser that shows you all the HTML code. And then you look for the images on the website. In most cases, after the image that the file has been put into the HTML script, it will have a mention there for the alt text description for that image. Other than doing that, I would prefer using an actual like an SEO audit tool to determine if your page is missing alt tag descriptions. But I would say in most cases, the easiest thing to do is go through your website builder and make sure that all the images that have been loaded into your web page have had alt tags added to them. Now, in most cases, like I said, in the whatever type of theme you might be using in WordPress, or if you're using a website service, a website page builder like Wix or GoDaddy, when you load the image into their media gallery or into the media folder, in most cases you can have the option of providing a title and an alt tag description. You can even there's an options even for Shopify. So any of you Shopify users that might be in the crowd this evening, when you load images into your collections in Shopify, you have the option of adding the title description and the alt tag description as well. But you can view the HTML source of your web page to see if there's any alt tags that are missing, but that would be very labor intensive to do it if you're not comfortable with looking at HTML code.
Is there a plugin for WordPress or something that will help people like to find out if there are any alt tags missing?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. So then that's when we're going to talk about some of these technical elements here. So what are the technical elements that need to be built into the infrastructure of your website to help you perform better in search? So one of the biggest technical elements of web page design that affects your position in search is making sure that each one of your pages has a meta description. And what the meta description is it's kind of like a brief synopsis of the content of your website that's used to entice people to click on the URL. So and that's what I said, a brief description that describes summarize the content of your website for the benefit of users in search. So if we were looking at the BACD Durham homepage, you would see that the meta description here is we are a not-for-profit that helps business entrepreneurs and small businesses in the region of Durham start and grow their business. So if I was looking at their website in a search engine results page, in most cases what you see, you get the URL for the website, and then you get a brief description of the URL underneath. That's what the meta description is. If you don't have a concise meta description for your website, one, it's not going to entice users to click on it, and two, Google's going to realize that you don't have a properly structured meta description, and you're not going to perform as well as somebody who does have a properly structured meta description that summarizes the content of the URL, or the content of the page rather. So, and that's why I want you to take away from this is that it functions better from a user engagement level, and it functions better from an SEO performance level as well. Because essentially that meta description is your elevator pitch to entice users to click on your URL. Where you put the meta description in is in most cases, if you're using a theme within whatever theme you're using within WordPress, they'll give you the option in the page builders to add meta descriptions for each page. If you're using something for Square or Wix or GoDaddy, whenever you create a new page, there should be an SEO options to add a meta description for that page. Essentially, the rule is that any page that you want to perform well in search that has meaningful content on it should have a unique meta description for it. What you want to avoid is copying your meta description across all the pages on your website. Okay, and that's something that's a common mistake that people make, because in one case, you're not going to accurately describe the content of each of your page, and two, Google's going to recognize it as duplicate content, and you're actually going to demerit you for it. So you're actually going to lose page rank for it. To form a good meta description for a page, keep it short and sweet, between 50 and 150 characters that describes the unique content of your web page. Please, please, please. Your home page is not the only home of your meta description. If you have other meaningful pages on your website that you want to accrue page rank, they should all have unique meta descriptions. So not to pick on our e-commerce friends, but if you have like a collection on your website of different items, each page for those items, if they all have a unique page, landing page for those items, each should have a unique meta description, maybe describing that particular article that you're selling, to kind of put that in context. And that's why I'm saying every page on your website that you want to rank well in search should have a meta description. Now, as you use your WordPress, you can use a plugin like Yoast that will help you formulate meta descriptions for all the pages on your website. It'll help you target on a particular keyword that you want to use in your meta description, that you want to make sure that you're using in the content of your website, or the content of that web page as well. Yoast will also look for alt tag descriptions as well. So that's Andrea was mentioning about what kind of tool you can use to kind of call out alt descriptions. Yoast is a great one for WordPress. Look into the SEO options if you're using other website builders, like I said, such as Square and Wix's GoDaddy. In most cases, they have accessibility and SEO options. For alt tag descriptions, in most cases, like I said, they're baked right into the media gallery options when you're loading pictures into media gallery on your prospective web platform. In some cases, like I said, when you're doing it with WordPress as well, inside your media gallery, you will have options of when you load the image into your media gallery that you can add a title tag and an alt description tag with it. But Yoast tends to be the gold standard for WordPress, and then you're kind of stuck with whatever you might have available to you if you're using such as Wix or GoDaddy or Square. Now, as we move away from what are the technical elements of SEO that affect your web page performance, we need to also have the discussion about, well, how well has the content on your website been provided in such a way that's going to help it perform well in search. When we talk about doing on-page SEO, we bake that down to, have you done your keyword research on your content for your website? And what I also mean by keyword research, are you using keyword terms that people are actually searching for online? And on top of that, how do we find those keywords that people are searching for online that we want to use? So if you're looking at content on your website and you're looking what kind of keywords you might be using, so this is a blurb I just pulled from the BACD website, and I just wanted to highlight the keywords in this bit of content that might appear in a Google search engine. So not-for-profit, Durham region, Ontario, so a area-based search, small business, business support, advisory services, business development training, entrepreneurial funding, networking opportunities, advisory meetings, and workshops. So if I put into the search engine, I put maybe small business advisory meetings, Durham, Ontario, chances are the BACD website would show up probably within maybe the top 10 within the search engine results page based on those keywords. So that's how keywords can affect your SEO performance, because you need to be using those relative keywords in building your content. So that is the easiest way to optimize the content of your website. And in most cases, like I said, if you do e-commerce as well, doing proper keyword research for product descriptions when you're trying to sell something online is where you're going to get most of the effort and put into on-page SEO work with your website. The tool I tend to recommend the most for doing your on-page keyword planning is a Google AdWords Keyword Planner. This is a completely free tool if you sign up for a Google AdWords Manager account. There's a tool within that platform that allows you to come up with keyword research ideas. And I want to just talk to you a little about how to do proper keyword research. When you look at keyword analysis results, it's going to show you keywords with relative to their average amount of monthly searches and how much competition there is for those particular keywords. So when most people look at those keyword insights, they tend to get tunnel vision because they only want to go after the keywords that have the most average monthly searches, but that's not necessarily the best route to go, because in most cases, there's a lot of other people that are vying for those keywords to be relevant. And chances of you ranking for keywords based on their competition being very high, you're not going to get traffic from that. You want to look for keywords that have a high average amount of monthly searches, but a low amount of traffic or no traffic at all. But you still have to tune that to the direction of your content. We see a trend now where people are doing what we call keyword stuffing. where in most cases, they're just cramming these keywords into the content of their website wherever they can cram them. And they're hoping that those keywords are still just going to be able to prop up the position of their website in search. But Google's getting smarter to that now, and they're constantly changing that algorithm to look for how web developers and content providers for websites are how they're putting their keyword mix into their websites, and they're able to call people out on keyword stuffing, and they'll actually get demerited for it. So when you do keyword research, you're looking for keywords that's relative to the content of the page that you're putting them on. They have to be blended in, and you should be using keywords that are relative to your content that have a high amount of monthly searches, but a low relative amount of competition, because then you're getting those opportunistic keywords that not a lot of other people are using, but it is relative to the content of your page. We don't want you to get lost in the mix of, if I were to pick a generic keyword string like pizza restaurant, how many different pizza restaurants are there? Nobody's going to find my restaurant compared to other people's pizza restaurants with something so generic. Maybe I need to, add a specific, a long tail keyword where it's like, best authentic Italian, pizza restaurant or something like that. What I want you to take away from this is that when you're designing content for your website, keep in mind that the keywords that you put into that content on your website is going to affect your performance in search. And I want you to be better equipped on how to research those keywords so you can provide meaningful, insightful content on your website. But not only that, but it's also going to be content that's going to help you perform better in search. Now, putting all of these different options into place, how do you go about measuring the actual performance of all these endeavors? And that's where Google Search Console is. Google Search Console used to be a tool that was called Webmaster Tools, and they changed it into Google Search Console. The whole purpose of Google Search Console is to measure the organic traffic performance to your website. In most cases, if I was to sit you down and ask you, like, okay, well, we're going to start working on your SEO. So what's your average position in search right now? Most people don't know. They've never even thought about it until just that very moment. So this is a tool that you can use to not only actively measure the performance of your website or your web performance in search, but proactively measure it so that you can anticipate things before they become too negatively impactful. That's why using Google Search Console is absolutely something you should add to your toolbox. Getting registered with Google Search Console is quite easy. I recommend doing, when you go to Google Search Console, I recommend that you do it through the domain name verification. So you have to verify your website with Google Search Console. And that depends on you adding a bit of a code to the domain name servers for your website. So if you bought your domain name from GoDaddy, but say you host your website somewhere else, you would have to go into your domain name hosting with GoDaddy and add a little code snippet to your DNS entries for your website to become indexed with Google Search Console. You can also do it with the URL prefix. You can also get indexed with Google Search Console through plugins as well. I know Yoast has a option of indexing your website through Google Search Console. They provide you with a bit of code snippet that you just copy and paste into Yoast. A lot of the SEO builder tools built into other website platforms such as Wix and Square and GoDaddy will have the option of you planting that HTML tag into their options so that you can index your website with Google Search Console. Not many people know that you can also index Shopify sites with Google Search Console as well. It's built into that as well. And you can measure the performance of that website in organic traffic and Search Console as well. Now, the kind of insight that you get out of Search Console is because you're able to track certain trends of what's happening with the organic traffic that's coming to your website. So you get information such as, what is your average position in search over a period of time? Of those people who are seeing your website, what is their percentage of people that are actually clicking through to your website when they see your URL? And then you can track these specific trends. And I believe this is between mobile and desktop. Impressions and clicks. So an impression is how many times your website appeared in a search. And then the clicks is obviously how many times people clicked on it. That's the difference between the two. And the click-through rate is just a metric between the two. 97 divided by 980 times 100%. So the average click-through rate is 98%. So 9.9% of the people who saw this website in a search actually clicked through on it. One of the other things that's important about Google Search Console, it also has the ability for you to share your sitemap with Google. Now, site mapping is important in a simple fact that it makes your website easier to find by Google search engine, but it doesn't affect your page rank. I just want you to put that into perspective. So even though it doesn't actively affect your page rank, it does help Google find your web page easier. When I put that in context, if I'm competing for traffic with a website that has a sitemap with Google and I do not, the website that has the sitemap index with Google will perform better than mine, even though it doesn't affect page rank. It just means Google's easier to find it. And if you're wondering what a sitemap is essentially, it's a snapshot of what the URL structure of your website looks like. I always use the analogy of if the internet was a forest and all the websites in that forest were trees, you took a snapshot of one of those trees and you gave it to a person, say, okay, well, here's my tree. Now you can find it amongst all these other trees. So it's going to make it easier to find. So obviously the person with the picture of what they're looking for is going to have an easier time finding that tree as opposed to someone who doesn't have a snapshot of the tree that they're trying to find, if you want to put that into perspective. There's many free tools that you can use to generate a sitemap. Yoast will generate a sitemap for you. If you have Yoast on WordPress. If you're not entirely sure if you have a sitemap or not, if you have a .com, a .ca, a .org, I don't care what kind of website it is, at the end of your website, if you type in /sitemap.xml and something comes up, it'll usually just be a string of URLs, then you have a sitemap. If you get indexed with Search Console, all you'd have to do then is enter that URL into the Google Search Console, submit a sitemap tool, and then you're providing that snapshot to Google, say, okay, here's my website, I'm making it easier for you to find. This is also especially important if you are in the process of building a website, but you haven't launched it yet. One of the most common questions I get from clients is, I just launched my website, but I can't seem to find it on Google, or why haven't I been showing up in search yet? One, it takes time for you to accrue a page rank, and two, how easy have you made it for Google to find your website? And doing that site mapping and sharing it with Google is one way to get that faster. So, and other in the context of this metric here of like looking at what your organic traffic trends. This was an organic search trend for a client of mine that was a hair salon. And you can see when there was a break in lockdown, and you can see, okay, under lockdown, and then the salons opened again, and you can see their traffic going through the roof. So using this kind of data, you're actually able to track what kind of real world trends are affecting the traffic to your website. That's the kind of data that's going to be pertinent for you to measure your SEO performance. Any questions on that, Andrea? Good so far?
I do have a question. I was just trying to find answers. I'm trying to put some URLs in while we're working through. So Sarah said, what's a good click-through rate? So I think we were talking about when you were talking about your click-through.
That's a real tough one, because
there is no answer to that.
No, there is no. Essentially, click-through rate is based on the content for your website. So, depending on what you're doing online, a 2% click rate might actually be good. Obviously, the higher, the better, right? But if you're thinking that you're going to get something like 50% click-through rate or 70% click-through rate, it's not going to happen. Obviously, the higher, the better, but it really comes down to, okay, what's your click-through rate compared to your competitors, right? So if your competitors are getting, say, a 3 or 4% click rate, and you're only coming in at 1 or 2%, then you realize that you've got to get better, okay? And if you're wondering, okay, well, how do I compare my click-through rate to my competitors? Well, you can't right out of the box. You have to actually start investing some money into some SEO monitoring tools like SEMrush or Moz or Ahrefs or something like that. That's when you have to actually start putting your money where your mouth is to measure that kind of competitor performance. But click-through rate's a real hard one to measure, or at least to put into perspective, because it's relative to the content you're putting on your website. It's whatever market you might be or audience that you're trying to address. My own perspective, like, the company that I work for, which does LED lighting for commercial greenhousing and cannabis and ag tech, a 2% or 3% click rate is actually really, really good when being put in the comparative analysis of the market that we're in. So it really comes down to what your competitor's click-through rate is, what kind of market you're trying to present your content to, what audience you're presenting your content to. What I want you to understand, though, is that don't expect like 70 or 80% click-through rate. That just doesn't happen. That's the kind of click-through rate you want when you're doing paid advertising. When somebody starts running like a paid marketing campaign, say like on Google Display Network or on Facebook or something like that, you want a very, very high click-through rate. The click-through rates on organic traffic, they tend to be really, really low, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I just don't want you to get stars in your eyes if you don't see like 70 or 80% click-through rates. It just doesn't happen.
Just a quick question. The sort of /sitemap XML, can you just tell us what that one is again, and I'll type it in?
Yeah, so let's go to a real world example. So let's go to, I'm going to pick on you, Andrea.
BACD. We're updating our website right now. So.
Yeah, well, I'm still going to see if it's there or not.
Well, last time you said it wasn't, and I think it was there. So anyway, so what do you put in? So you put the website?
Yeah.
And then you do /
sitemap.xml.
Sitemap.xml. Website. So your website, sitemap.xml.
Yeah.
We're improving our website right now.
Excuses.
No, seriously, we're revamping it to make it
okay, but here we go.
Easier.
Okay, so you do, so your sitemap, and I can tell a lot of things from this actually. So your sitemap is being built by a WordPress plugin, which is all-in-one SEO. So Yoast does the same thing as this. So this is where you can find a sitemap, but in some cases, you might even have to put in a hyphen or an underscore. But in most cases, if you're trying to figure out if your website has a sitemap or not, usually what happens if you put in sitemap.xml and you get a 404 error, you do not have a sitemap.
So sitemap.xml.
Yes.
Yep, okay. I've typed in correctly.
Now, if you want, and just to put that into, there's a lot of easy tools that you can use. XML sitemap generator is one that you can use that will index your entire website, and you can download your sitemap to add to your, this is a way you can generate a sitemap for, say you have a website that's hosted with like HostPapa or HostGator or something like that. This is one of the things you can use to generate a sitemap, but it becomes very, very intensive to do this. And I would recommend that you seek out a consultant before doing that, or look at some videos on YouTube. There's a lot of different ways to get a sitemap on your website. If you're using WordPress, I'd recommend using a SEO plugin to generate a sitemap. Like I said, Yoast is a great and easy one. If you're using Wix or Squarespace or GoDaddy, in most cases, they come baked into the website builders that they use. They provide you with a sitemap. So in most cases, I'm going to pick on another client of mine.
What about Shopify? How do you get a sitemap on Shopify?
Shopify, you get a sitemap usually by having to get an add-on.
An app.
Yeah. So how plugins handle a lot of the technical SEO elements for WordPress, add-ons handle a lot of the technical elements for Shopify. So if you are going to, see if I can get some examples here.
I just want to point out, you see that Jamie's using Google. I've already said to people, seriously use Google. It is a great resource for this information.
Yeah.
So all the links I'm putting in there for you guys, I'm getting from Google. You just need to use Google. It's a great resource.
Okay, so here you go. And like I said, this is so Shopify automatically generates you a sitemap. And a lot of people don't even realize that. So if I go to a Shopify store, so whatever, even if it's still using the Shopify domain, if you haven't purchased a domain with Shopify, if you still put in a /.xml, in most cases you have you already have a sitemap. Okay.
Do you want to test it?
I'm trying to think.
I have a Shopify website that I'm.
Okay. What's the URL?
So mine is unique YOUNEEK .online. I think it is.
YOUN.
So you.
Yeah.
I think it's. I gotta type it in. NEE. So YOUNEEK .online. I'm building myself a website, as I keep telling everybody, to learn how to use Shopify. So,
and let's test it. So sitemap.
Yeah. And it's
there it is.
Yeah, awesome. There you go.
Okay.
So I'm learning how to improve this. So every time I sit on this session, I learn more information.
Yeah. So if you're doing technically SEO for Shopify, a lot of it comes into the Shopify add-ons. And if you want me to go into depth a little bit more about different add-ons you can use for Shopify, I can actually talk about that a little bit.
Well, we do have some people, like we have a real combination of people from the questions we're getting asked. We do have some WordPress people. We've also got some Shopify. Like if anybody, like put in what platform you're using right now. If you are using Wix or if you're using a GoDaddy or Squarespace, it'd be great to know what everybody's using. Because they all work slightly different, but they also, so somebody said, GoDaddy, Wix. Yeah, so I think we'll have a blend.
Yeah, the deal with Wix and Squarespace or Square and GoDaddy and stuff like that is a lot of the tools they tend to put in a box and they hand it to you and like, okay, this is the tools that are coming with your website rather than you having to proactively go and use them. It comes baked in. Like I said, Square, I know a lot of the site mapping and all of that stuff comes baked in right into their website builder. WordPress, if you want to be able to handle a lot of the technical SEO for WordPress, a lot of that's done through plugins, and that's why I recommended Yoast. If you're doing technical SEO for Shopify, it's the add-ons. One of my biggest pet peeves, especially for e-commerce people, is like when most of the templates that you use for building a Shopify store don't come with reviews. You actually have to download and implement an add-on to get reviews on your Shopify store. And that's also the same way with the other add-ons to handle, let's see if I can actually find them here, Shopify add-ons.
I've been a little reluctant to add add-ons because it already says my website is 40% slower than everybody else's. I'm like, how can that be? I have nothing on there.
So yeah, Shopify apps. So this is where you can get apps plugged into your Shopify store to help you with SEO. So if you want to say like image compression or image optimizer, right? So here you can
use it like a WordPress. Okay.
It works a lot like WordPress plugins.
Okay.
And some of these are free. Some of them are paid. They'll tell you which ones. CrushPix is a good one for image compression on Shopify. I think there's an all-in-one SEO for add-on or app for Shopify as well. So if you're wondering what you can do to get some of the heavy lifting done for technical SEO for Shopify, it's all within the apps. Some, like I said, the takeaway from that as well is some of them are paid, some of them are not paid. I know CrushPix is free. That's the one I tend to recommend for image compression. So if you need help with speeding up your website or your Shopify store, Andrea, this is the one I would recommend to you.
Okay. So then I'm just going through the questions. So Sarah just said that she missed the description about the current slide you have up. I think it was kind of, was it my website? I'm not really sure. So if you want to clarify that question, Sarah, put it in again. And then we also have another question. I've used PHP for web development. What is the best way to check for the sitemap? is the way to do it.
PHP.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get back to you about that one. I don't know that off the top of my head.
It should still work the same way.
It should still work the same way.
I would have thought so.
Because the XML format is the generalized acceptable format for sitemapping. So whether you've built it in PHP, your sitemap is still going to be an XML format. Okay.
And then just a few people say it was not the XML. Sarah, I still don't know. And I can't find sitemap for my site. That's what you said. Like, people, okay, we've got to do this. So add in the plugins, use the things that Jamie's recommending, because like I said, he really is providing us some great information there.
Well, I mean,
so is the sitemap based on the number of pages on the site?
Yes. Yes. So every page on your website that has a URL associated with it is going to be included in your sitemap. Unless, here comes the if and a but, you've told Google that you don't want your want certain URLs indexed. So if you go into Search Console, which I happen to have open here, let me find it. Oh, well, I'll just open it up.
So just Melanie said, my sitemap with Squarespace has hundreds of pages listed. Is that normal? Now I'm just going to state, like on Melanie's website, I think it's got products. Does every product page a URL? Does that show up in the sitemap? Yes. So yes, I would say that's
the only concern. The concern, and this is actually under. I wish I do. Hold on now. I have an object reference for that. So. And this is how you need to understand PageRank. So think of PageRank as a glass of water. So over time, your website fills up this glass of water. But unfortunately, how PageRank is distributed over your website is that no matter how many pages on your website you've told Google to index, it takes this bucket of water and it pours a little bit of water in all those glasses across your website. And that's why I want to talk a little bit about, okay, well, how do I tell Google which pages I want them to index and what pages I don't? You can add, here it says removals. You can tell Google what pages you don't want indexed on your website. On top of which, your website should have a robots.txt file, which is a file that's used to tell Google how to index your website properly, or what URLs of your website you don't want them indexed. Okay? Or you can just submit a request to have the URLs removed from indexing, which you can do within Google Search Console. What becomes concerning with that is that, especially for our Shopify users, again, when you create a new page on Shopify, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. There's a lot of gears turning in the background that it auto creates a bunch of other pages with that page creation that don't necessarily need to be there. And it becomes down to you end up diluting your page rank with those other pages. So we're getting into a really advanced topic here about SEO, and I can see people are starting to get their confused face on. I didn't want to go into the scope about that. The takeaway I want you to get away from this is that if you don't have a sitemap, you should have one. If you're not indexed with Google Search Console, you should be. Because if you have a sitemap, you get indexed with Google Search Console, you share that sitemap with Google Search Console. When you go further down the rabbit hole and you see how many pages are actually, let's pick on someone here.
I just want to also, Melanie saying she's got the blog pages, it's listing those too. Do you want your blog pages to be listed in your sitemap?
Yes.
And do you want your products listed in your sitemap?
Yes. Put it to, let me put it to, what's her name?
Melanie.
Let me put it to you in this perspective. If you want Google to be able to find those pages, it needs to be included in your sitemap. And do you want Google to be able to find those pages easier, right? The pages that I would be concerned about you not putting in your sitemap that don't need to accrue PageRank would be like an empty cart page or some generic, does your, or if you have your, terms and conditions page, does that need to share page rank with the rest? Like, does that affect, like, nobody's going to be searching for the terms and conditions. Do you need to tell Google where to find your terms and conditions page, or like your return policy if you do online sales, stuff like that? So that's the kind of context we take away when we're looking at how we want our pages on our website to accrue page rank, and we want these pages to share in the page rank, but these pages we can put aside. So there are ways you can exclude those pages from your sitemap. But in most cases, when you get a sitemap baked right into whatever web platform you're using, whether it be like Wix or Squarespace, it's just a carpet bombing of all the pages that are on your website. But then it's onus on you after the fact to go back and tell Google what pages you don't want to split your page rank with.
And so if you were on Squarespace or Wix, you would use the Google Search Console to do this?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. The only thing that, like I said, in most cases, every Square page or every Wix page, you don't have to do anything extra to get a sitemap. Like, you don't have to install a plugin. You don't have to do this. It's part of the website builder, like Shopify. Every time you get a Shopify store, it comes with, when you build a Shopify store, it automatically comes with a sitemap with it. The other thing that's site mapping that's important, if you're in the process of restructuring your website or rebuilding your website, are you using a service that's actively sharing the most up-to-date version of your sitemap with Google? And if not, then it's onus on for you to reshare your sitemap with Google every time you change the structure of your website. So imagine, like I said, if your website is a house and you start knocking down some walls and changing the rooms, and now the inside of the house looks different, and people are expecting to look a certain way when they show up, and now it's not, you're confusing the heck out of them. So every time that you restructure your website, at least from a URL perspective, like I said, if you're continuously adding product pages and retiring or unpublishing old pages, you need to make sure that Google's getting that most up-to-date version of the sitemap for your website. I completely lost my presentation. I just wanted to take some time here too as well to reiterate the importance of seeking out resources when it comes to really in-depth topics like this. I wanted to try and present this information in such a way that it's accessible. There are services out there. I want you to engage with your small business centers across the province. Here in Durham, we have the Digital Service Squad. Here, the BACD here in Durham. These are all marketing professionals with lots of different years of experience in different aspects of the digital marketing field. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to look into the information. It's in most cases, a lot of these topics tend to be intimidating, but if you break it down into smaller bits and bites that you can manage, it becomes less and less intimidating. And that's why, like I said, I wanted to break this down into technical SEO and on-page SEO. And then the takeaway from that is engaging with your small business centers for these kind of resources that we can help you along with you to tackle tasks like as opposed to looking for the SEO for your website. So we have the Digital Service Squad here in Durham, along with the Digital Main Street program, creating graphics for social media, creating content calendars, brainstorming ideas, website content, graphic reviews, Google My Business. So we're talking about online SEO for your website. If you want to have a discussion about local SEO, we need to discuss about how Google My Business affects your local SEO. Learning about how you do graphic design such as Canva and Pixlr and Snapseed. And here you can book a discovery call here in the Durham region if we have callers in that area. The takeaway from that is that I want you to make sure that if you are stumped on something or you need support, you have your small business center there to support you, to help you with these topics. And they're in connection with professionals like myself or the professionals that you saw on the screen there before to help our small businesses and entrepreneurs take on these topics.
So I'm just going to go back to the questions because
Yep.
I don't know whether we can answer this because it's Nasima said my website at Google Search Console shows as success, but when I use the sitemap XML, it doesn't come up.
Okay. First question: what platform was your website built on?
Did you want to turn your...
Yeah, you can turn your mic on at this point.
Turn your mic on, and then see if Jamie can help you. WordPress.
WordPress. Okay. So if you have... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm using the WordPress.
Okay. So if you navigate to your website and you type in /.xml, you get what, a 404 error?
No, it says not found.
Not found. Okay. So my recommendation for you would be then to install a plugin that's going to get you a sitemap. Like I said, Yoast.
Mine is WordPress.
Yes. That's fine.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I have that. Okay.
So within your WordPress, add the Yoast plugin. So go to your dashboard and add the Yoast plugin, and it will start giving you this information.
Yeah.
It will help you set it up.
Andrea, can you still see my screen?
No.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to share screen here.
I'm just typing in, so... And it says I'm on Shopify, and it gives me a 404 error.
Hold on.
Oh, yep. No! We're all going... I'm just going to put in the SBC website for people too. So if you're... People are asking about BACD in Durham region. If you go to this website, you can put in your postcode. If you're in Ontario, it will tell you where the other centres are. So there's a button there that says find your local centre. Mm-hmm. Some of these services for the digital squad has changed a little bit because it's a government program. It really depends if you're I think it's a physical business right now, but by all means come in and talk to BACD. I'm an advisor there. I specialise in this. I'm always learning, so I love being on these sessions. I am not an expert. I will always ask Jamie for a little advice, but Google is a really good resource, and I'm happy to help anybody that's going through some questions around any of this SEO. Okay?
Yeah, like I said, the takeaway from this is that optimize the images for your website. Make sure your pages have meta descriptions. Make sure your images have alt tag descriptions and titles. Make sure you index your website with Google Search Console, and make sure you have a sitemap and you share that with Google Search Console after you get indexed with them. If you take those steps, I'm not going to call them simple, it's all relative to what people are comfortable with, you will already gone a long way to improving your SEO performance. After that, it becomes into how far down the rabbit hole do you really want to go with looking at SEO? There's entire people who've built their entire careers just around SEO. And the problem with SEO too is that this is an ever evolving situation, because Google continuously modifies and turns the dial in the algorithm that they use to determine your position in search, which is how people have made careers out of this, is staying ahead of those trends and monitoring the forecast and traffic on how to proliferate your organic traffic to your website. But like I said, the takeaway I want to have for this audience is that it is a big topic, but like I said, pick off some bite-sized amounts. Today might be, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to look at the images on my website. You know, am I using the proper file formats? Did I do anything for image compression to help improve the performance of my website? And a quick way to do that, maybe if I can get a person from the audience here, if they want to give me a website, I'll do a quick little SEO evaluation to show you what it looks like. You want to toss me one there, Andrea, if somebody puts in a website?
Yep. So mangopaintinc.com. So mangopaintinc.com.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so let's just see if you have a sitemap. So you got a sitemap. Sweet. That's great. Okay, so you've got a sitemap. Yeah, first thing we've determined. And then if you're on, if you're on Chrome, if you go into more tools and you go into developer tools, there's a tool over here called Lighthouse. And what it allows you to do is to generate kind of like a quick SEO report of your website. And I'm just going to run it just for funsies to see what kicks out about it. And this is going to hone in on those topics that I mentioned.
So go to more tools and then Lighthouse.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. You go into more tools.
More tools.
Developer tools.
Developer tools.
Yeah. And then there'll be a selection up here at the top called Lighthouse. And it's generating a report right now.
And then generate report.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So whoever put in the mango paint one. So there's some room for improvement on your page speed. So here we go. Properly size images. Oh boy.
Melanie, is this the WordPress website or the Squarespace website? WordPress.
Okay. So if the WordPress plugin I recommended for WordPress was called Smush. And if I open another tab, Smush for WordPress. So if you go into the website dashboard for WordPress, and down the left-hand side, you'll see plugins, and you'll see add new for WordPress. And you can just type in Smush into the in-page search for plugins. Adding Smush to your WordPress website is kind of a one-stop shop for compressing images on your WordPress website. And the nice thing about Smush as well is that it will bulk compress your images 50 at a time. And then every other image you load in after the fact, Smush will actively compress for you. So it's almost a fire and forget kind of solution. Now, the next question people ask me about a plugin like this is that what is the difference between the paid version and the free version? The only difference is that the paid version offers you to bulk compress images 250 images at a time, as opposed to 50. So it's just a convenience thing. I've never had to recommend any clients upgrading, but this is a free and easy thing to use for compressing your images on WordPress. Crush Pick, if you're on Shopify, the plugin for Shopify, that was a good one. If you're using a hard-coded HTML doc or a website or a PHP document or a website, you're going to have to do some kind of more finagling. You're going to have to use like a third-party tool, such as like TinyPNG or some sort of other image compression tool within like Adobe. If you're doing graphic design within Canva, Canva allows you to compress the images as you create them, so that you can. So if you're building a large infographic or a large graphic or whatever, there's options to compress the image so that it doesn't take up as much bandwidth on your website as well. But at least going back to the analysis here. So that's why I said in most cases when we talk about performance, and you can see looking at Melanie's website here, she's got a lot of gorgeous picture. And obviously if you're selling paint, obviously those images are going to be highly important to the image or to the message that you're conveying across in your website. That being said, if that's you, is that Melanie?
Yes.
Hi, Melanie. Yeah, you want to be able to compress the images on the website, but do in such a way that it's not going to overly impact the quality of the image. So, you know, Smush is a great way to do it with WordPress. In most cases, you can claw back a lot of that performance. Another way to improve the page speed on WordPress is, does your website have a cache policy set up? And actually, you can see that recommended down here in the yellow. And there are WordPress caching add-ons as well. You can look them up. WP Cache 5, I think, is another plugin you can add. And if you're wondering what caching is, there are going to be elements on your website that are considered static. They don't change. And your job with that plugin is to tell browsers, these images don't change. So no matter if you come back today or a week from now, the image is going to be the same. It's safe for you to load a version of that image to the cache folder on the user's hard drive. And instead of loading that image back from the host server of the website, it loads it from the user's hard drive. It improves the performance of the page when they load it up again. In some cases, what will happen, if you go into whatever browser you're using and you clear the cache and you load a web page for the first time, it loads kind of slow, but then you load the same page again after that, it loads in really fast. Well, that's because a lot of the images on that website has been saved locally to your hard drive. And instead of loading it from the host servers that host the website, it's actually loaded it from your hard drive. But without your website telling the browser which images is safe for it to cache on the user side, it's going to continuously load those images from the web server every time somebody navigates to your page. Okay. But like I said, we can talk about this for hours. It's miles wide and miles deep, this topic, unfortunately. But like I said, image performance is one of the easiest ways to help improve your position in search. And even then, if we go and look at accessibility, we're talking about maybe it's only looking at aesthetic things right now, like what's the contrast ratio between the foreground and the background. So you see Melanie's here got a very, very light text on a very light background. That's the kind of things you want to avoid. You know, this text could be maybe a little bit darker, so it stands out a little bit better. What kind of fonts are you using? What kind of text size are you using? Other than that, you know, the images, do they have alt text? And you can see that if I look at some of the images or some of the things that have passed, it will probably say that you do have alt text provided with your images. And referencing that question earlier about how do I see the alt text, if I inspect this image, oh boy, it's a lot. Oh, you use Elementor. I can see that you used Elementor to build your website. If I can hit Control F Alt. Oh, it's going to give me a lot. Let me see if I put alt the script. No. Now, this is one of the ways, like I said, I don't recommend it to see if your images have alt text description. This is one of the other ways I can do it. A lot of your images have been formatted by the graphic website template that you're using. Elementor is one of the ones that's popular within WordPress. What I would recommend is that, at least I know in Elementor, you have like a media library. Inside that media library, if you're able to edit the images to make sure that they have alt text descriptors, I'm pretty sure that they do, because it's not being kicked out of Lighthouse here. Unfortunately, I think I closed the...
So there's a question around, somebody's asked, how do we download the Lighthouse report once we run it? Is it possible to do that?
Not that I'm aware of. This is it kind of lives within the browser. Yeah. In most cases, what I tend a tool, if you want to be able to create a report on it, I tend to use the snip and sketch tool within Windows, and you can snip and you can snip portions of this out. So if you go into Windows, you've got the Windows snipping tool, and you can snip bits of this out. The other thing I want you to take away from Lighthouse as well, this tool is not auditing your whole website. It's auditing it one page at a time, okay? That's kind of like the technological drawback of this. So if her web page, say this page is getting like a 55 page speed performance ranking out of 100, like see, it's even a little bit lower now. This will fluctuate depending on, you know, am I on Wi-Fi? Am I on dedicated? Maybe her server was overloaded. A lot of you might be using shared hosting with your web hosting service. That'll affect your page speed load time. Oh, it's because I have so many Chrome extensions as well. But yeah, as far as I know, there's not a way that you can download this. But what I wanted to come down and see was show you the past audit. So
Christine said you can click on the you can print summary, I think, as a print section.
Okay. So
if you go on the three dots, note down more, one line where the red is, right? Those three dots. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, and you can even file convert that print summary into like a PDF file, file conversion. Yeah.
There often is, but you just have to go find 3 dots or 9 dots.
Yeah,
it's
and it's going to be different compared, but this is what you're using inside of Chrome. But if you're using Microsoft Edge or if you're using Firefox, this is obviously not going to be applicable to you at all.
Yeah, it's going to be different.
So take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But if for you, Melanie, here, so when I was looking at the past audits here, so it says that at least on this page, you can see that image elements have alt attributes. So this is telling me on here that images that you have provided on this page do have alt attributes provided with them, okay? But that being said, if I navigate to a different page on your website, and let's do that. Let's go to the About page, because that's always a good one as well. And I run the same audit. Because I remember I said that this tool works a page at a time, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Let's open a window because it's extremely warm in here. You guys are putting me on the hot seat.
There are other websites in there ready to be reviewed.
Yeah, I don't have time to see. This one's ranking a little bit better. That probably because there's probably less images on this website, so it's not affecting the page speed as much. But there is images here. But the recommendations will probably be still somewhat the same. Proper image compression, serve it with a proper cache policy. So when I do audits for other clients, I tend to look at the home page first, and then we might look at other further pages. But the insights you gather from looking at the home page tend to be, passable through the rest of the entire website. So if you're missing a meta description on your home page, then you're probably missing a meta description of all the other pages. The thing I want you to take away from this tool, at least, is that it only audits a page at a time. But the insights that you get out of that tool are probably, like I said, applicable to the entire website.
Did everybody learn something?
Other than being completely confused.
No, people say, love this, thank you. Like, use the plugins, like, for sure. So I've put in some like WP cache, I have a look at all those, help with the cache, help with the smush, like put those plugins in, find the plugins that are going to work, because it will make a difference.
Yeah, and I've included,
and then Sarah said, I will hire someone.
Yeah, it comes down to what your comfort level is. What is your comfort level with doing something like that? What I want to instill in you guys is to not to be afraid to ask questions and be insightful about it. Remember, this is your website. It represents you, your brand, and taking charge of it. One of my biggest pet peeves as a digital marketer is that people think of their website as kind of like an online business card. They get it done and then they sit it on a shelf and then that's it. And it's just collecting dust. You don't even know if it's working for you. And like SEO is also, like I said, it's sweat equity for your digital presence. The more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. If you need technical support, you need technical support. Not everybody is a website wizard, and I wouldn't expect them to be. What I would love to impart upon you is that, it is not a Herculean task to look after your SEO. It can be done. You may get help on the way. The the small business centers across Ontario will be there to help you. And if they don't have a question right off the hand, they will get an answer to that question and support you. That's why it's so important. I just don't want you to think that, I can put my website up and it's going to be fine. It's going to get all the traffic and then there's not going to be a problem in the world. We just don't exist in that world anymore. And unfortunately, like I said, the people's attention spans keep getting shorter as compared to getting longer. The convention for how long it takes for your web page to load and how much people will go to a different website, that metric of time keeps getting smaller. I think when I first started doing digital marketing, it was 4.5 seconds. So in the 3 or 4 years that I've been doing digital marketing, it's actually shrunk an entire second. So people are expecting to find exactly what they're looking for, when they're looking for it, and have it, everything, loaded with lightning speed. And like I said, it is a big topic, but I said it's not an insurmountable task, right? So you have resources out there. There's specialists like me, there's specialists like Andrea that are willing to get the answers and the resource that you need to help improve your digital performance online.
So thank you, Jamie. Has anybody got any other questions? Everybody saying thank you, because I think that there's a lot of information here, but I think that the general sort of rule of kind of what you need to do is just follow it step by step. Use Google as a resource because you can ask the question and you can find the information. And as Jamie said, go to the Google resource if you can.
Yeah, and that's why I say go directly to the tap for your information. Because I said in most cases, if you're trying to rank on Google, then that's the people you want to be talking to, like the developers and the people who modify the algorithms on Google. What should I be using? So you were asking before, what should I be using for page speeds? You know, and you know, there is a Google Google page speed insights, right?
Man, I often use just website grader just to give me an indication, and then you know, somebody came back to me, had gone to their web developer and said, yeah, but they're trying to sell services, and I say it's just an indication. But when
yeah, that's right.
8 seconds, I know this website is taking 8 seconds to load because I can sit and count the 8 seconds, and the 8 seconds you have lost every single person coming to your website.
Yeah.
Like literally, you have to get it up within less than 3 seconds if you can.
And then you also have to think about, like I said, you know, the amount of audience that's navigating to your website on mobile keeps getting higher and higher and higher. So has your web pages been optimized for mobile? So most cases, when you're building web pages within, say, WordPress or even Wix or Squarespace, they'll have the option of previewing the website on mobile. And on top of which, within Google Search Console, you actually have, let me move this out of the way. You have mobile usability checks. So it will tell you if there's any problems with your website performing on mobile. And you can see that it uses like a smartphone virtual web crawler to crawl your website from what they call the Google bot for smartphone. And actually, in most cases, the only virtual environment that Google crawls websites right now to determine their page rank is built with mobile in mind. So in the world of web browsing, mobile is king right now. You have to have a website that performs well on mobile and actually looks right on mobile. And in the biz, we call that responsiveness, the ability for your website to properly load on different devices, whether it be a desktop, a laptop, tablet, or a smartphone. But the way the wind is blowing is that everybody has a smartphone now. And rather than being chained to their desk, they're browsing web pages, they're doing commerce all online through their smartphone, which is why you see a lot of the large commerce sites online now are building apps for their prospective spaces right now. You know, Amazon has a website, they have an app. Walmart has a website and has an app. All these other places. So they understand that the need for people to be able to not only browse, but to shop and buy on their smartphone is very big. And that's why I wanted to introduce you guys to Google Search Console, because like I said, it has all those tools baked right in there.
Oh, so nice. Again, what is a good number for mobile usability? There is no such thing as, there's never a black and white answer to these type of questions.
No.
And what my recommendation is, we always want to improve it. So take a number now, have a look at everything that's happening with your digital, really all channels, and see what's happening, and then look to improve it. So use it as analytics and really just keep looking to improve it all the time. You know, use plugins like Yoast, and every time you add a picture, make sure that you put a alt tag in it. Just continuously improve those steps as you go through it, and then it won't feel so insurmountable when you come to do it. It will just continuously improve your website.
Yeah, and to speak from that, in Andrea, in most cases, most people, once they get over the apprehension of actually doing something about it, they realize it wasn't as difficult as they thought. And it's always a big success for me as a digital marketer when I see people taking charge of the digital presence, and that sense of accomplishment that you're like, yeah, I'm doing something to help my business succeed online, and getting them to that point that they feel empowered to take charge of the digital presence, the whole reason why we do this job in the first place. And obviously, like I said, we want to put as many useful tools in the hand of entrepreneurs as possible. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. And honestly, when you think about it, did you become an entrepreneur, or did you open a small business because you wanted it to be easy? That's not exactly that's not the mindset of a small business owner or an entrepreneur. It doesn't work that way in this realm either. And like I said, unfortunately, what's happened with COVID is that, you know, a lot of the a lot of the commerce and the way that we do business is transitioning to do it online. So if there's any good thing that's to come out of all this nonsense with COVID, is that people are taking charge of their digital presence and they're being proactively to improve that presence as well. Either way, see that we are getting close to our allotted time here. I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for their attendance and for your attention. I apologize in advance and after. Like I said, it is a large topic, and I didn't want to go into too much minutiae or details about it. You will all be getting a copy of the slide deck